Hello everyone and welcome back to Alternative Apex. We're back here for round 5 of the 2026 season here in Project Pinnacle for the Belgian Grand Prix at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. This legendary Formula 1 venue will play host to today's round of the championship, where we'll have 2 sprint races to decide the starting grid and a Grand Prix as well, of course, the main event where points are given out. Before we went into this weekend, we did have some news regarding next season, in fact. First of all, it was that Carlos Sainz has signed a 2-year extension with the Williams team. That means he'll be sticking around with them until 2028, which really isn't a surprise considering how well they've run this season. It seems a logical decision from both parties that they should stick it out together. The other bit of news was that Ocon has re-signed with Haas for 1 more year. Only a short deal for Esteban Ocon, but considering that both he and Haas haven't been having the greatest of years so far, it makes sense, I suppose, in that sense, that they don't get too hasty with the length of contract. And one other huge piece of news coming into this one is that there's a 2-year extension for Andrea Kimi Antonelli. Incredible news for the young Italian driver. His first year in F1, he only had a 1-year deal, got extended for this year, was options apparently for him to be continuing longer into the future, and that's exactly what's going to be happening, which is a brilliant opportunity for Antonelli. He hasn't had the best of seasons so far, but he has been very quick on his day, and has been right there with his teammate George Russell, just hasn't quite had that consistency required so far this season to fight for the championship. But with that 2-year deal in his pocket, hopefully he can build up to be the star that many believe he will be in the future. Now, as we look to how the standings are going into this race, we find that, of course, it's George Russell that leads the way ahead of Lando Norris. Norris has been the main contender so far this season, and we expect that to be the case for most of the season, unless one of the other teams can, well, get their act together, frankly. Williams have had some brilliant speed at times this year, but just haven't had the consistency. Ferrari have been wobbling in the midfield and just have not been able to piece things together. McLaren, as mentioned, Norris second in the championship, looking good. McLaren second in the constructors as well, as things stand. But they just don't seem to have that raw edge that Mercedes has at the moment. Whether that will change as they bring upgrades to the car, we will have to wait and see. Speaking of upgrades, we have the upgrades for this Grand Prix, and we have a lot of them. We have upgrades for McLaren, for Mercedes, for Red Bull, for Ferrari, for Aston Martin, for Haas, for Alpine, and for Cadillac. Now, worth noting, the 3 Ferrari power teams, their upgrades is with a new Ferrari engine. So that's why all of them are bringing an upgrade to this event. Also upgrades, as mentioned, for McLaren, Mercedes and Red Bull. That's all sort of small general upgrades, nothing too major, all small steps, hopefully in the right direction for them. The biggest upgrade coming into this one, though, is Aston Martin with a huge, almost B-spec level upgrade for this weekend. Whether or not that will pay off, we'll have to wait and see. Adrian Newey's starting to really get his hands dirty with this year's Aston Martin, with the limited time he had to develop it, of course, becoming a new member of the Aston Martin team just over a year and a bit ago officially. One last bit of news to bring you ahead of the sprint races here in Belgium is McLaren have brought along their 3rd entry, their wildcard entry, to this round, and it will be driven by their young driver and Formula 2 reigning champion, Leonardo Fornaroli. Let's see how he can do in his first weekend as a Formula 1 driver. Fornaroli won't be featuring in sprint race number 1, but he will be in sprint race number 2 as you look to the back of the field for our first sprint race. We have Franco Colapinto in the Alpine, and he's just lining up behind his teammate Pierre Gasly there. Disappointing day for the Alpine team. And we see Gabriel Bortoleto in his Audi. He lines up in the 10th position there, just inside the top 10. Top 10 from this race will qualify for the Grand Prix. Arvid Lindblad just ahead of him, and then we see the Cadillac of Sergio Perez there with the number 11 on the front of that car. Next up, we see the Red Bull of Isaac Hadjar doing a solid job so far this season with the struggling Red Bull 4 team. Lewis Hamilton in his Ferrari, again just mediocre from the Ferrari team as a whole it seems in this event, as he lines up behind his former teammate and now Cadillac Formula 1 driver Valtteri Bottas. Max Verstappen is next up on the grid for Red Bull Ford, hoping that is one of his more local to home Grand Prix so that he can put in a good performance for the fans. He lines up just behind Fernando Alonso with the upgraded Aston Martin. Good lap in, 1 lap qualifying for Charles Leclerc. He lines up on the front row, but on pole position for the first sprint race, it is Andrea Kimi Antonelli. Can he take his first ever Grand Prix pole position here in Formula 1? Let's wait and see. As the revs rise and the lights come on, we are racing, and we're underway here in the first sprint race here at Belgium. Strong start from Antonelli. He's going to lead him into turn 1, but Leclerc's going to try and carry the speed around the outside. He's going to struggle to keep it on the road, though. He's going to go wide and hand the lead right back to Antonelli. Fernando Alonso at a flying start. He is up into the second position there. Bottas also making some moves here early on. He's into 4th place as they come up through the legendary Eau Rouge and Radion for the first time today. Hamilton battling away with Isaac Hadjar there. Isaac Hadjar, of course, a big fan of Lewis Hamilton, would have been slightly nervous going side by side up through that iconic piece of racetrack alongside his hero. As we see up the road, the lead Red Bull of Max Verstappen in the slipstream of Bottas here, as up at the head of the field, Leclerc and Alonso battling it out for that second position, and Charles Leclerc retakes his starting position on the grid there. He is back into second place. Bottas holds off the Red Bull, and then you see there Arvid Lindblad losing a place to Sergio Perez, dropping back in the ninth spot there, with Bortoleto in at the 10th position. Colapinto then next up with Gasly, seemingly not having the best of starts at all. He still sits at the back of the field. But at the head of the field, it is Antonelli. A nice clean start for the Italian driver. Battling for 4th position here, we see Max Verstappen once again on the tail of Valtteri Bottas. Bottas putting in a very good showing here for the Cadillac team in sprint race number 1. A top 10 starting position on the grid would be very well deserved for the team, considering they have had quite a strong weekend as a whole so far. And sadly for Bottas, he will lose that position to Max Verstappen, but he's still in what would be a 9th position on the grid if he were to hold this position. But look at Hamilton flying down the inside as they come up through Eau Rouge and Radion. He's going to make an unbelievable move, and he will take away that position from Valtteri Bottas. And Bottas in the Cadillac is going to try and fight back, but he may well struggle to do just that. As meanwhile, at the head of the field, it is still Antonelli, but Leclerc and Alonso dropping back just a little bit and looking like they may be set to do battle among themselves here. Once again, we see a Cadillac having to defend, and despite that strong one-lap pace, it seems the Cadillac is lacking in race trim, as he now has Isaac Hadjar right on his tail. Hadjar in the Red Bull Ford knows the top speed isn't a strength of that car. He's going to have to try and do something in a more cornering section of the lap. Looking to the outside here of the bus stop chicane. That'll give him the inside for the final corner. And if he gets a good drive off the corner, which is exactly what he does, he will take that position away from Bottas, who now drops down into the 7th position, just ahead of his teammate Sergio Perez, as we now see Lewis Hamilton has reeled into the back of Max Verstappen. Ferrari versus Red Bull here. Hamilton versus Verstappen, these two known for their brilliant battles in the past in Formula 1. Sadly, on this occasion, it's for what will be a 4th row start in the Grand Prix here, as Hamilton will go to the inside and is going to take that position away from him. But look at how late Verstappen broke there. Incredible bit of driving from the 4-time champion, and he wins that battle of the multi-champions there. As up the front, we have someone that does not have a championship today, not even a Grand Prix win or a pole position until potentially now, as Antonelli comes to the final chicane for the final time. Charles Leclerc has reeled him in here in these late stages. He's got onto the tail of the Mercedes, but it is as he comes out of the final corner for the final time. It is going to be Andrea Kimi Antonelli. He is going to win sprint race number 1. He will secure pole position for the first time in his career for the Belgian Grand Prix. Leclerc on the second row, but Alonso holding off Verstappen and Hamilton in the end. The battle for 10th position isn't much of a battle at all in the end, it seems here. Bortoleto in the Audi is looking set to comfortably come to the line here. Both Alpines way off the pace in sprint race number 1. Clearly some issues with that team. We've seen that team have some high points and some low points this year. Certainly, I think it's fair to say this is going to be a low point, because they're going to have a double do not qualify in the Belgian Grand Prix, as Bortoleto takes the final qualifying spot from sprint race number 1. A dominant drive for Antonelli in the first sprint race. He takes his first Grand Prix pole position. Will he be able to convert that to victory? We'll have to wait and see. We also have some other big names in the second sprint race who will be fighting to join him on that front row. Let's have a quick run through the results of sprint race number 1 though first. It was, of course, Antonelli who won that one, ahead of Charles Leclerc, who has to be said doing a decent drive for Ferrari. They're getting close to the Mercedes. Ferrari still confusing team this year as a whole, really clearly having some issues. Talks of potentially some disruption at the head of the team could be making its way into the team as a whole, and just messing things around really, as the board and the chairman and so on are getting too involved perhaps in the F1 operations, and that, well, it historically does not tend to help out. Fernando Alonso in 3rd place with the new Aston Martin Honda upgrades, looking quick in that first sprint race. He'll be lining up 5th for the Grand Prix. He just came home ahead of Max Verstappen. Lewis Hamilton made up a few positions in that sprint race, showing that Ferrari, the car seems to have some decent speed. It's not a slow car, that's for sure. Whether or not they can use it to the best of its abilities is another question entirely. Behind Hamilton, we had Isaac Hadjar in the second of the Red Bulls, not too far behind his teammate. Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez in the two Cadillacs in 7th and 8th, double qualifying for them. Arvid Lindblad in 9th place, he'll qualify once again for a Grand Prix this season. And Gabriel Bortoleto in the Audi will take the final qualifying position from sprint race number 1, as a troubled Alpine comes home with a double DNQ from the first sprint race. As we turn our attention now on to sprint race number 2, at the rear of the field, we have the Audi of Nico Hülkenberg trying to qualify into a Grand Prix for the first time in a while now. Ahead of him on the grid in 10th position, it is Liam Lawson there in the Racing Bulls KTM, looking to make it a double qualify for that team. Ahead of him on the grid, we see Esteban Ocon fresh with a new deal in his pocket for 2027. He lines up just behind the rookie and wildcard entry for this weekend, Leonardo Fornaroli in the McLaren. Ahead of him, we see the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll, number 18 on his car, looking to try and make the most of his upgraded Aston Martin. Ahead of him, we see Oliver Behrman, the lead Haas driver, on the grid here, with more and more links putting him in a Ferrari next year. Ahead of him, we see Alexander Albon in the Williams with his teammate Carlos Sainz next up on the grid as well. Williams looking solid in one-lap qualifying. Third place on the grid goes to Lando Norris. Looks to try and reel in it here to George Russell in the championship. But ahead of him, Oscar Piastri, his teammate, finally starting to string some strong results together. But on pole position for sprint race number 2, trying to make it a Mercedes front row lockout, it is George Russell, the championship leader. The revs rise as the lights come on then, and we are racing for the second sprint race here at Belgium, and it's again a strong start from pole position. Piastri going to look and try and do what Leclerc almost did in the first sprint race, but does exactly the same thing in the end, goes slightly wide, and that's going to hand the inside line and the position to Lando Norris as they head down the hill. So it is Russell, Norris, Piastri, the top 3, Sainz ahead of Albon, Stroll in 6th place, Behrman and Ocon, they're the 2 Haas cars, rounding out the top 8 positions. Fornaroli in 9th place. That would be the final qualifying position for the drivers in this field, so he'll be looking to try and hold on to that one, if not make some progress with his 2 teammates up the road battling for 2nd and 3rd place, and battling is the word to use, as Piastri had a little bit of a look there, but sits behind for now as we see Behrman going down the inside of Alexander Albon, trying to make some passes here early on. Ocon, meanwhile, feeling the pressure from Fornaroli. Fornaroli, for now at least, biding his time, not taking too many risks, of course. That is the worst impression you can make on your debut in Formula 1, is to crash the car. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not recoverable in terms of your talent, because we saw it in sprint race number 1, a man that crashed in his debut in F1, and still has come back to do quite well indeed. Now, Oliver Behrman to the inside of Alexander Albon into the bus stop chicane. The Williams car traditionally very good around sort of these higher speed tracks, but it has to be said so far, not looking like Albon and Sainz are gapping these drivers as much as you perhaps expect them to do usually. That or Behrman is just putting in a stellar drive, could be either of the two really, as the top 3 have checked out in the distance. Behrman to the inside of La Source. Will he get the move done? Yes, he will, as going wide in the background, Albon and Lance Stroll in sympathy, it seems. Turn 1 proving to be a tricky corner for these drivers to navigate, and Behrman up in to the 5th position. Further down the order, we see Ocon still in that 8th spot, and Fornaroli taking things easy, it seems, as he runs in the final qualifying position. Hülkenberg in 10th place. Looks like he could be set to miss yet another Grand Prix this season. But up at the head of the field, it has been another dominant display by the Mercedes team, and it's going to be another front row lockout. In race number 1, it was Antonelli who won. In race number 2, it's going to be George Russell. It's a 1-2. Mercedes will lock out the front row. Behind there, we've got a drag race to the line. Carlos Sainz takes 3rd place in a late charge from him ahead of Oscar Piastri. Oliver Behrman in 5th place there beats Alexander Albon. And the final qualifying position will go to Leonardo Fornaroli in 9th position. Looks like it's going to be tough to beat Mercedes in this Grand Prix ahead of us, but hopefully at least we can get a good battle between those two. McLaren and Ferrari seem to be the 2 teams that could well challenge Mercedes. Williams in the end there looked a little bit better than I expected, considering their slow start to that sprint race. But who knows what might show up on Grand Prix race day. We never quite know what changes these teams will be making overnight. Another note from that race, of course, Leonardo Fornaroli making his way into a Grand Prix on his first attempt. In theory, should not have been a question at all. Driving a McLaren, you should be able to get into a Grand Prix. He only just did it, in fairness, so we're lining up 18th on the grid, but nonetheless, it's still a solid drive from him, and hopefully we can see him move forward in the Grand Prix. McLaren said going into this, it's not about scoring big points with Fornaroli. It is purely about getting an experience sort of under his belt. It's better to do sort of Grand Prix racing than it is to do just plain old testing. So McLaren seem happy with his performance so far this weekend, saying that a Grand Prix finish would be more than enough for them. Let's see if that's what they can achieve. They've certainly got to start as we look forward to the Belgian Grand Prix. One quick rundown then before we make our way to the starting grid, and that is the sprint result for the second sprint race. George Russell ahead of Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz in third position, Oscar Piastri in fourth, beating a drag race at the end. Oliver Behrman looking quick there in fifth position. Albon in sixth place, Lance Stroll in seventh. Eighth place going to Esteban Ocon, making a double qualifying for the Haas team as well. And then, of course, Leonardo Fornaroli, meaning we have 3 McLarens on the grid for the Belgian Grand Prix. And for the Grand Prix, we have the following lineup. At the rear of the field, it is Gabriel Bortoleto in the 19th position. Just ahead of him, it is the rookie Leonardo Fornaroli in his McLaren, lining up in 18th spot, looking to try and make some moves in this one to get up into the top 15 and score some points on his debut. Ahead of him, Arvid Lindblad in the Racing Bulls KTM, looking to try and get his first points of the season. And Esteban Ocon next up in the Haas, with the Toyota backing, of course, that team looking to start to bring some meaningful upgrades, hopefully, as the season goes on. Cadillac of Sergio Perez there lining up just ahead of Ocon. Then we see the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll with his upgraded Aston Martin. The Cadillac there of Valtteri Bottas will be the lead Cadillac on the grid for this race, but his teammate very much right behind him. Then we see the Williams of Alexander Albon, not the best sprint race for him. Then we see the Red Bull of Isaac Hadjar. He came home in a solid position in the end. Oliver Behrman there lining up in the 10th place on the grid, just about getting into that top 10 after that battle with Albon. Lewis Hamilton in 9th place for the 7-time world champion. He has got his fair share of victories around Spa, looking to potentially add to that list today, but he'll have a lot of passes to do for it. Oscar Piastri in 8th place, looking to try and get his first podium of the season. Then we see the Red Bull Ford of Max Verstappen. Carlos Sainz next up. He lines up in the 6th position on the grid, with Fernando Alonso in the 5th position there for Aston Martin again. New upgrades on that car, and it's not looking too bad at all. The McLaren of Lando Norris lines up in the 4th position on the second row of the grid, with Charles Leclerc just ahead of him. Those two seem to be the main contenders for victory, if it's not going to be one of our top 2 on the grid. George Russell looking for his 4th win in 5 races, and Andrea Kimi Antonelli, his younger teammate, looking for his first career Grand Prix victory. Will today be his day, or will his teammate continue his seemingly dominant start to the 2026 season? The lights are coming on then as the revs rise. We are racing, and we are underway for the Belgian Grand Prix of 2026. Again, a pole sitter making a good start, and again the driver on the outside trying to swing it around the outside, and again they go a little bit wide. They don't seem to learn, do they? As Leclerc is going to slide up and past Russell down towards Eau Rouge and Radion. It is going to be Antonelli, Leclerc, Russell, Alonso, Norris there, all absolutely nose to tail. Alonso making a crucial move to get up into the top 4 positions, but now let's see if he can hold on to that place as they head their way down the Kemmel Straight for the first time here on Grand Prix Sunday. Russell's in the slipstream, looking to try and take that 2nd position back here. He wants to be able to take yet another victory this season, but he's not quite close enough, or is he? He sends it to the inside at the last moment, and he's gonna get the move done, surely. Leclerc fighting back with all he's got in that Ferrari, gonna try and hang it all the way around the outside. Looks like he might just do it. No, Russell gets that position away from Leclerc, and Alonso holds off Norris just behind them as well here. Good battling in the top 5 already as they make their way into the perhaps less racing-centric side of the racetrack, but don't tell that to Leonardo Fornaroli. He's already up into 16th spot here in the opening lap, now just 1 spot away from the points-paying positions. Behind him, we've got Bortoleto battling away with Arvid Lindblad and Sergio Perez there in the back of the field, all doing battle here in the opening lap for every last position that they can get their hands on. Through Pouon they go, and it is still Antonelli at the head of the field for now, but we've got plenty of racing ahead of us before we get to the end of this one. Albon there just outside the top 10, Behrman ahead of him, Piastri, then Verstappen and Hamilton once again finding each other on a racetrack. It seems like no 2 drivers seem to find themselves quite often together as those two. Then we see Sainz in 6th place, Norris 5th, Alonso 4th still, Leclerc 3rd, Russell trying to reel in his teammate, but it's Antonelli who is trying to break the field here in the early stages. The two Mercedes cars looking quick early in this Grand Prix, as now we see Oscar Piastri on the tail of Max Verstappen. Piastri's disappointing season so far, looking to try and turn something around for him here as he goes to the inside into the Lacombe chicane. Verstappen will try and keep his nose in, but he's not quite able to do it this time. He has to take a position away there from his race. He drops in to the 9th place. Behrman is behind him. Piastri next up for him to try and pass will be Hamilton. Piastri, an 8th position on the grid, really a disappointing start for him as he goes to the inside of Hamilton, showing that he has more pace than what his sprint results showed. He was oh so close to being in that fight for what would have been a top 2 grid position, but in the end just got beat by the Williams of Sainz, and that was proving crucial to quite how his race could well take shape. He's having to make a lot more overtakes than he otherwise would have had to, and that car looks quick enough to make those overtakes. You can see his teammate not too much further up the road now, as we see the leading group have got together. It's Antonelli, Russell, Leclerc, Alonso and Norris, all absolutely nose tail here. Norris looking to the inside at the exit of the final corner, going to try and get his foot down, and he will squeeze Alonso just a tad on exit, and up into the 4th position there. Next position he'll be trying to get is for a podium place, so let's see if he can keep up this momentum here as the top 5 are oh so close. Russell again having a little bit of a look at Antonelli, but not quite going for the move there. As a wide moment for Norris in the background there, as was the case for Alonso. Going to make them drop back a little bit as the clouds are starting to come over this racetrack. Hopefully it stays dry for a nice enjoyable Grand Prix here, but it is certainly very cloudy as Russell's dropped back quite a bit here from his teammate. Potentially some issues on the Mercedes. Can he get himself going back in the right direction as Leclerc goes around the outside of the final chicane, but not quite able to make the move, and Russell will take that back. Perhaps a mistake for the Mercedes man, as he needs to think about the championship, I suppose, in this race. A 2nd place would be a brilliant result for the British driver. For Mercedes, looking to try and take his first F1 championship. Still very early days of the season, just over, after this race it will be just before the halfway point in the 12 race season. So he's looking good so far, but we still have the majority of the season ahead of us here. And Russell has got back into a rhythm here. He's back on the tail of his teammate, and Leclerc and Norris aren't too far back behind him either as they head into the bus stop chicane. Leclerc popping out of the shadow, but it's Russell who's going to go to the inside and try and take the lead here around the outside of the final corner. Will Antonelli put a squeeze on him? He will do just that. Antonelli with much less to risk than his teammate, and he knows it. He will lead lap number 8 of 11 as we head towards the final stages of this Belgian Grand Prix. Antonelli is getting oh so close to that first career victory. Russell, Leclerc, Norris all trying to take those positions away, for now at least, unable to do so. And who else would it be on the racetrack battling away aside from, of course, Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, as they get awfully close towards the final chicane. They've got a bit of a train going on behind them here. Hamilton not having a race to remember whilst his teammate runs in the podium places. Verstappen not able to make that pass there, as now we've got 3 wide into the final corner as we have Behrman alongside. That's Albon and then Stroll all in that battle. Incredible stuff here in the mid-pack. All the points-paying positions here, and they are doing all they can to try and get every last spot on this racetrack as Stroll goes back to the inside of Behrman. Behrman with strong pace in the sprint, but now not looking quite as good there, especially when he spends some of his time off the track. But up at the head of the field, the clouds have cleared, and it is Andrea Kimi Antonelli who has just one more braking zone to worry about as he heads towards the bus stop chicane for the final time. Russell has a little bit of a look there, but perhaps knowing that on this occasion a 2nd place is more than welcome, because out of the final corner now, for the first time ever in Formula 1, he is a Grand Prix winner. Andrea Kimi Antonelli wins the Belgian Grand Prix. Italy return to the top step of the podium in Formula 1, and Antonelli does it in style. It's a Mercedes 1-2. Another brilliant day for the team from Germany, based in Brixworth and Brackley. They have got themselves yet another wonderful, wonderful result. But Charles Leclerc in 3rd place, dragging his Ferrari up the order. Not too bad either. So a first victory for Antonelli, and not the easiest of victories, it has to be said. Not a dominant win like we've seen from some drivers this season. He had to work for that one, but in the end it was a lights to flag victory. He started on pole and he won the race, and that is what matters. 25 points going to him. Russell seemingly content with a P2 today. Charles Leclerc in 3rd place, way ahead of his teammate, who was way back down the order, only in the 8th position. Looking through the rest of the field, of course, Norris in at the 4th position there for McLaren. Again, being outscored by Russell, and given Russell has a relatively strong championship lead at the moment. It's not insane, and as I mentioned earlier, it's very early in the season still. It is getting to the point now where Norris has to show at least some signs that he is capable of outscoring George Russell this season. Antonelli, I'd have to say after that race, is a bigger threat to Russell's championship than Norris is, because, I mean, critically, Antonelli won that Grand Prix, and Norris this season just hasn't quite had that edge to win races. Of course, we saw a couple of times he's been very close, including today, of course, a 4th place, a very good result, but it's not quite the outright speed that you need on the day to beat the cars like the Mercedes and the Ferrari. Behind Norris, the upgraded Aston Martin did drop back in the Grand Prix a little bit in terms of pace, but on its own in the end. Carlos Sainz in 6th place, beating Oscar Piastri. That battle in the sprint race proving crucial. Piastri made some overtakes early on, perhaps pushed his tyres too hard, and just couldn't quite gain enough time on Sainz in the end. Hamilton in 8th place, clinging on to that position ahead of Verstappen and Albon, with Lance Stroll and Oliver Behrman just outside the top 10. Leonardo Fornaroli, a strong drive from the rookie. He comes home in 13th place and scores 3 points for himself and the McLaren team, which is certainly nothing to be disappointed about. And behind him, Isaac Hadjar, the second Red Bull. Again, Red Bull, you could say a 14th for a second Red Bull driver is a disappointment, but with where they've been this season so far, honestly, compared to previous seasons, that's not a bad result at all for Hadjar. Valtteri Bottas adds another point to Cadillac's collection as well there, with his 15th place finish. Esteban Ocon just dropping outside the points in the end. Arvid Lindblad also missing out, with Gabriel Bortoleto and Sergio Perez bringing up the rear of the field in today's Belgian Grand Prix. As we look towards the Drivers' Championship standings now after the 5th race of the season. 12 races in the season are in total. After the next one, we will be at the halfway point. And in the Drivers' Championship, Russell leads the way now by 23 points over Lando Norris. Carlos Sainz, 3rd place at the moment on 66 points. Pretty big gap for him. Seems like there's a battle emerging, though, for that 3rd place in the Drivers. Antonelli in that mix with Charles Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton, not a great Grand Prix for him today, perhaps showing some signs that he might be starting to lose the edge in form that he did once have. Alexander Albon, a Grand Prix winner this season. Half his points still have come from just that victory, over half his points, in fact. Fernando Alonso is 8th, just a point ahead of Oscar Piastri, who sits only 9th in the Drivers' Championship, just a position ahead of Lance Stroll, who in turn is a point ahead of Max Verstappen. So some big names from 2025 and before that year really finding themselves in the midfield this season, and their teams seem to have a rough idea of what's going wrong. Red Bull know that they just seem to have a bit of a power deficit. McLaren, on the other hand, with Piastri, I mean, his one-lap pace, his sprint races haven't been that bad. It just always seems to be that he just loses that 1 or 2 places that he didn't quite need to or shouldn't have lost, and finds himself stuck in a place for the Grand Prix that he shouldn't have been in, which has really hurt him so far this season. Behind them, of course, we mentioned Verstappen just ahead of his teammate Isaac Hadjar. Well, I say just ahead, almost double his points, but Hadjar proving my point that he is doing a good job. He still is clearly ahead of the other midfield drivers. I suppose midfield at this point, it's half the field. In fact, the whole field is midfield. Let's say not back marker. That's too harsh on Red Bull to call them a back marker team at this stage. But they're still ahead of the teams that perhaps aren't as comfortable getting into each Grand Prix. Behind Hadjar, Behrman on 10 points now, just a point ahead of Gasly, with his teammate Colapinto still on his tail. Of course, neither of them in today's race. Also scoring points so far this season, we've got the likes of Sergio Perez, Esteban Ocon, Sebastian Vettel in the mix as well, Liam Lawson, Gabriel Bortoleto, Valtteri Bottas, and now Leonardo Fornaroli has got some points on the board. So now Lindblad and Hulkenberg are the only 2 full-time drivers this season yet to get any points to their name. Will that change next time out when we go to the Italian Grand Prix? Well, we'll have to wait and see. One bit of news we do have going into the Italian Grand Prix is that Mercedes are bringing their first engine upgrade of the season, which for a power track will be scary to their opposition. Of course, though, all of the Mercedes-powered cars get to that upgrade, so McLaren, relatively speaking, shouldn't be affected. Same goes for Williams, and Alpine aren't really in the fight with Mercedes, but they'll also be getting that power boost as well. But for the teams like Ferrari, Aston Martin, Red Bull, it's just another issue that they're going to have to counteract here. So let's see how that one goes. Ferrari's home Grand Prix looking for a special result, and I hear we could be having 3 wildcard entries in the next Grand Prix. One of them could be even wearing red. Who knows what we will see. I'll see you all next week, though. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, goodbye.